What's growing on, gardeners? It's Sunday, February 4th, and spring is getting closer and closer here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. And on today's video, I'm going to share with you all 4 things you should do now to supercharge your garden soil for the new growing season.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.
When preparing garden soil for a fresh planting, you want to do that about 1 to 2 months in advance. That's because we are going to amend our soil with a few things that take a little bit of time to break down. So if you do these things right now, that will be perfect for a planting at the end of February or March, or even as far as April. So doing these things in advance will pay dividends. The first thing that you'll want to do is remove any weeds or old plants that you no longer need from the garden area that you're going to prepare. Now, this may seem fairly obvious, but keep in mind, especially with weeds that are actively growing, now that it's starting to warm up, they are going to grow faster and faster, and they may even flower and go to seed on you and spread all of that seed all around your garden bed. So it's really important that before we do anything, we clean up our planting area. Now, removing weeds is self-explanatory. All you have to do is grab them and pull. And again, it's important to do this as early as possible in the year while they're still small, because when you rip up these weeds, they will disturb your soil, and that is generally not good because you are disturbing that natural microbiome. So do this as early as possible. That way you disturb the soil less and you don't wait until you're pulling out these huge root masses when planting is imminent. Removing old plants will be a little bit more complicated. That is because your soil is a living, breathing microbiome. It is a web of fungi and bacteria that work in harmony to help decomposition and release nutrients and organic matter and help feed your plants. So for that reason, we want to try and disturb it as little as possible. So here I have a basil plant that I have been letting strategically decay all winter long, but the problem is it didn't get really cold here until the middle of December, so this has been dead for less than 2 months. And if I were to tug on this, I can't pull this up. This root mass is really big still, and it's holding onto that soil very well. So if I were to just grab this plant and rip it up, I would destroy this soil. I would rip so much of it up. So this is why I really recommend you do this at least a month or 2 in advance. So instead of just ripping out this plant, I'm actually going to take a pair of pruning shears and I'm going to cut it down. Because like I said, I'm not going to be planting in this soil for at least another 30 to 60 days. So I'm going to let this root mass here continue to decay until the very last minute, where if I need to rip this up to make more space, I'll pull it out when it's at basically absolute minimum volume remaining in those roots. So let things continue to break down for most old plants in your garden if you don't need to plant in there immediately. Step number 2 to supercharge your garden soil is to add any organic soil amendments now to your garden soil. We're going to add things that take a little while to break down. Things like alfalfa pellets, bone meal, azomite, sulfur prills if you're trying to lower soil pH, gypsum if you're trying to increase the loaminess of clay soil, or one of my favorite things, rapidly decomposing kitchen scraps. I like to add these things to my soil now because they take a month or 2 to break down. You need that soil to warm up and come to life and start devouring these additives because they are organic. Now, before you add any of those amendments to your soil, you are going to have to remove any mulch layer that you may have on top of your soil, because these amendments need to actually contact and be worked into the soil itself. Now, during winter time, I always place a mulch layer on top of my inactive garden beds because I don't want the UV of the sun beating down on unprotected soil, destroying it all winter long, and I don't want the rain flushing out all of the nutrients because there's no root mass in there to maintain the soil microbiome. You want to protect it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of this mulch that you see on top. And by the way, you don't have to remove the mulch layer by hand. You could always use a rake. Now that the mulch layer has been removed, we are going to place our kitchen scraps on top of the soil. And in this bowl right here, I have banana peels, coffee grounds, some cut ends from my kale, and a few other goodies that I just collected throughout the week. Coffee grounds is one of my favorite things to add to garden soil in order to add some micronutrients, trace minerals, and also nitrogen. Step 3 to supercharge your garden soil is to add a 1 to 2 inch layer of compost. And here I'm using a store-bought organic mushroom compost, but any good quality compost will do, including homemade compost. Now there is a reason why this is step 3. That's because we want to put down our kitchen scraps or soil amendments first on top of our soil and then bury them under compost, because your compost is going to be rich in bacteria and fungi that will help assist in the decomposition, and you want at least 1 to 2 inches of compost on top of the amendments to help facilitate their breakdown. So now we're going to dump the compost in our garden beds, and we are going to evenly spread it on top of the kitchen scraps or whatever soil amendments you chose to add. And now we have a beautiful looking garden bed that your plants will love when it comes time to plant in it. And step number 4 to supercharge your garden soil is, if you're not going to plant in the garden beds right away, cover it either with a tarp or with mulch, because you want to protect all of the compost and the soil amendments that you just put down. You don't want them to get beaten up and bleached by the sun, and you don't want heavy rain to come along and wash away all of those nutrients that you just put down. Now look, I know that I said to many of you that you should be doing this process 1 to 2 months ahead of time before planting, but I also recognize that some of you may need to plant now, or maybe you're just catching this video a little bit too late. Now, if you have to plant right away and you don't have the luxury of time, don't put down kitchen scraps like I did in step 3. Either put down an organic fertilizer or don't put down any amendments. Just put the fertilizers directly into the planting hole. So basically you'll just be pulling weeds, pulling out old plants, and putting down compost, then placing your new transplants or seeds directly into the garden with a little bit of an organic fertilizer. If that is you, feel free to do that now. But if you're like me and you have the luxury of time, we want to protect this garden soil and the compost and the amendments that we just put down. And like I said, in order to do that, we are going to either place a mulch or a tarp over it to prevent any damage from the sun or washout from the rain. Now, if this were winter, I would be tarping this bed. That's because in the winter, obviously, temperatures are cold, so decomposition slows to a crawl. And when you place a tarp over your garden bed, when the sun comes out, it warms the garden soil. It traps all of that heat throughout the day, which increases the decomposition rate because it'll speed up the metabolism of the fungi and the bacteria inside your soil. Now, because we're in February and it starts warming up here in the coastal Carolinas, March is basically nice and warm for us most days. So because of that, I'm not going to bother with the tarp this late in the winter, and I'm just going to be cheap, and I'm going to put back all of that mulch that I pulled off the bed originally, because it's going to be really easy for me to just scrape this mulch back with a rake and then put my transplants down. And remember, one of the first things to come to life in the winter are weeds. If you don't cover that garden soil with a tarp or mulch or something, and you're not immediately going to plant into it, you're going to start seeing weed seed germination. So please, cover, cover, cover. Protect that new compost and soil if you're not going to plant in it right away. And now we have a beautiful looking garden bed that is ready to be planted in a few weeks. And I'm probably going to plant my first onions in here right around March 1st, or the first week of March. So that's going to be exactly about 30 days from now. And I know that my onions are going to love being planted in here because I did such a great job preparing the soil. And while in this video I featured my raised bed gardens, most of these principles can also be applied to earth bed gardens as well. The mulching may not work as well if you have really long rows, but things like silage tarps works great if you want to keep your fields weed free until you plant in them. And if you want instructions on how to supercharge a container garden, I'll drop a link to a video I made last year down in the video description that will teach you everything you need to know. And that right there is how you can supercharge your garden soil. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these, and share this video to as many people as possible to help as many people as possible. If you're curious about any of the products that I use in real life in my garden, I have them all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the video description. So if you expand that video description, click on the Amazon store link, you'll see everything I use in real life in my garden. And while you're down there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Well, we are celebrating Dale's 4th Gotcha Day with us, so I made him a little cake in a donut pan out of pumpkin and oatmeal and egg and cinnamon. Dale, come on up. Let's sing to you. Up, way. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dale. Happy birthday to you. And many more. Let's go take it over to his bed. Oh, he is gonna love this. I just know it. I made this for you, buddy. Oh, and luckily there's 2 more left because we can't just make Dale 1 cake. He's gotta have 3.
Ooh, oh, he loves that.
Oh, he actually stopped to look at me. I'll take that as a thank you.